The gunshot echoed through the rain-soaked night as Sophia Harlow clutched her two children to her chest, their small bodies trembling with fear as they huddled beneath the meager shelter of a drooping oak tree. Blood seeped from the grazing wound on her arm, but the physical pain paled in comparison to the terror gripping her heart. Behind them, somewhere in the darkness, Victor was still searching, his drunken rage fueled by whiskey and jealousy that had finally pushed her to flee the nightmare her marriage had become. Dallas, Texas, 1878, a place that had once promised Sophia a life of security, now represented only the prison she was desperately escaping. Her children, Emma, age 6, and William, barely 4, were soaked to the bone, their faces streaked with tears that mingled with the raindrops. Emma's golden hair, so like her mother's, clung to her pale face while little William's eyes, wide with confusion, broke Sophia's heart anew. "Mama, I'm scared," Emma whispered, her small hand clutching Sophia's skirt. "I know, sweetheart," Sophia replied, trying to keep the tremor from her voice. "But we need to keep moving, just a little further." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. She had no destination, no plan beyond escaping Victor's fists and threats. The rain fell harder, making the dirt road leading away from town a treacherous mud path. Sophia's once fine dress, now torn and mudded, weighed her down, but she forced her legs to keep moving. The children stumbled alongside her, too exhausted and frightened to complain. They had been walking for what felt like hours when the silhouette of a barn appeared in the distance, a dark shadow against the stormy night sky. Sophia hesitated. Approaching a stranger's property could be dangerous, but the children were shivering violently, and she feared pneumonia would claim them if they remained in the rain. "We're going to find shelter there," she told the children, gesturing toward the barn. "But we must be quiet as mice." The barn stood at the edge of a modest cattle ranch, the main house visible as a distant structure with a single lantern burning in a window. Sophia led her children through the muddy yard, wincing as her shoes sank into the muck, making each step a struggle. The wound on her arm throbbed, a constant reminder of how close Victor had come to killing her this time. The barn door was mercifully unlocked, sliding open with a low groan that made Sophia freeze, listening for any sign they'd been discovered. When no alarm sounded, she ushered the children inside, closing the door behind them. The interior was dark, smelling of hay and animals, but blessedly dry. Sophia could make out the shapes of several horses shifting in their stalls, their occasional snorts the only sounds disturbing the quiet. "We'll rest here tonight," she whispered to Emma and William, guiding them toward a pile of hay in the corner. "Try to sleep, my darlings." She had just settled the children into the makeshift bed, covering them with her shawl when the barn door slid open. Sophia instinctively placed herself in front of her children, ready to fight or plead for their lives if necessary. A tall figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, holding a lantern high. "Who's there?" A deep voice called out, neither threatening nor welcoming. Sophia's throat closed with fear, but she forced herself to respond. "Please, sir, we mean no harm. My children and I just needed shelter from the rain." The lantern moved closer, illuminating the face of a man in his early 30s. His features were weathered by the sun, but handsome in a rugged way, with clear blue eyes that assessed her cautiously. His brown hair was damp from the rain, suggesting he'd come from the house after hearing something. "You're bleeding," he said, his gaze dropping to her arm. Sophia instinctively covered the wound with her hand. "It's nothing." The man set the lantern down on a nearby barrel and approached slowly, as one might a spooked horse. "My name's Kieran Yates. This is my ranch." His eyes moved to the children huddled in the hay, their faces pale with fear. "Those your little ones?" "Yes," Sophia replied, still uncertain whether this man represented safety or another threat. "I'm Sophia. These are my children, Emma and William." Kieran's expression softened as he looked at the children. They look half frozen. He removed his coat and held it out to her. "Put this around them. I've got a fire going in the house." Sophia didn't move to take the coat. "We can't go to your house, my husband." She swallowed hard. "He'll be looking for us." Understanding dawned in Kieran's eyes. He lowered his voice. "He the one who did that to your arm?" Sophia nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Kieran was silent for a moment, then seemed to come to a decision. "You can stay here tonight. The barn's warm enough with the animals. I'll bring you some food and medical supplies for that arm." "Thank you," Sophia whispered, taking the offered coat with trembling hands. "Lock the door behind me," Kieran instructed. "I'll knock 3 times when I return so you'll know it's me." After he left, Sophia secured the door as he'd suggested, then returned to her children. Emma was watching her with eyes too old for her young face. "Is the man going to help us, Mama?" she asked. Sophia wrapped Kieran's coat around both children, breathing in the unfamiliar masculine scent of tobacco and leather. "I think so, sweetheart. Is Papa going to find us?" William asked, his small voice trembling. Sophia pulled him close. "No, darling. We're safe here." She hoped she wasn't lying to them again. True to his word, Kieran returned within half an hour, announcing himself with 3 distinct knocks. He carried a basket covered with a checkered cloth and a small medical kit tucked under his arm. "It's not much," he said, setting the basket down. "Some bread, cheese, and dried beef, and a couple of blankets." He gestured to the medical kit. "Let me look at that arm." Sophia hesitated, then nodded, sitting on a hay bale while the children eagerly investigated the food basket. Kieran worked with gentle efficiency, cleaning the wound with whiskey that made Sophia bite her lip to keep from crying out, then bandaging it with clean strips of cloth. "Bullet?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Sophia admitted. "He was drunk. I don't think he meant to actually hit me." Kieran's jaw tightened, but he said nothing as he finished securing the bandage. "How long have you been on the run?" he asked when he was done. "Since sunset. We didn't get far." "And your husband? He's from Dallas," Sophia nodded. "Victor Harlow. He owns the Mercantile on Main Street." Recognition flashed in Kieran's eyes. "I know of him." The simple statement held volumes of unspoken judgment. He wasn't always. Sophia began, then stopped. What was the point of defending a man who had become a monster? "The drinking got worse after William was born." Kieran nodded, his expression grave. "You can stay here as long as you need to. My ranch hand, Thomas, lives in the bunkhouse on the other side of the property. He won't come to the barn until morning chores. By then, I'll have figured something out." "Why are you helping us?" Sophia asked, the question that had been nagging at her since he'd discovered them. Kieran was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "Let's just say I know what it's like to need help and not receive it." He stood, gathering his supplies. "Get some rest, Mrs. Harlow. You and your children are safe here." After Kieran left, Sophia and the children ate ravenously, the simple food tasting better than any fine meal she'd ever had. With full stomachs and wrapped in the blankets Kieran had provided, they huddled together in the hay, the children quickly succumbing to exhaustion. Sophia remained awake much longer, listening to the rain on the roof and the occasional shifting of the horses in their stalls. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to contemplate a future without fear, though she couldn't imagine what shape that future might take. Morning came with pale sunlight filtering through the cracks in the barn walls. Sophia woke to find Emma and William already awake, quietly exploring the barn, fascinated by the horses watching them with liquid eyes. "Don't get too close," Sophia cautioned, stretching her stiff limbs. Her wounded arm ached dully, but the bleeding had stopped. The door slid open and Kieran entered carrying another basket. He looked different in the daylight, less intimidating somehow, though no less imposing with his broad shoulders and tall frame. "Brought you some breakfast," he said, setting down the basket. "And some clean clothes that might fit you and the little ones. They belonged to my sister and her children when they visited last summer." "Your sister?" Sophia asked, accepting the basket. "Sarah. She lives in Austin with her husband and 3 children now." A smile softened his features. Those clothes were taking up space anyway. While the children ate the breakfast of biscuits, jam, and hard-boiled eggs, Kieran pulled Sophia aside. "I rode into town at first light," he said in a low voice. "Your husband has the sheriff and half the town looking for you. He's claiming you stole money from him before you ran." Sophia's heart sank. "I didn't steal anything except our freedom." "I believe you," Kieran assured her, "but it complicates things. They're searching all the farms and ranches in the area." Fear clawed at Sophia's throat. "We should leave." "I don't want to bring trouble to your door." Kieran shook his head. "And go where?" "With 2 young children and no money." When she couldn't answer, he continued. "I have a root cellar under the barn. It's not comfortable, but it's well hidden. If anyone comes searching, you and the children can hide there." The idea of being trapped underground made Sophia's chest tighten with panic, but she nodded. For her children's sake, she would endure anything. "Thank you, Mr. Yates. Your kindness is—" Words failed her. "Kieran," he corrected. "And there's no need for thanks. I'm just doing what any decent person would do." But they both knew that wasn't true. In a world where men like Victor Harlow commanded respect and power, true decency was rarer than gold. The day passed slowly, with Sophia and the children confined to the barn. Kieran brought them lunch and dinner, each time staying a little longer, talking with Sophia and playing simple games with the children. Emma and William, initially shy around the tall cowboy, quickly warmed to him, especially when he showed them how to feed the horses carrots from their palms. Night fell, and with it came the sound of approaching horses. Kieran, who had been telling the children a story about a brave cowboy and his trusty steed, immediately tensed, putting a finger to his lips. "Quick," he whispered, leading them to a trapdoor hidden beneath a pile of hay. "Down you go." The root cellar was dark and smelled of earth and stored vegetables, but it was dry and more spacious than Sophia had feared. Kieran handed her a small lantern. "Don't light it unless you must," he warned. "And no matter what you hear, stay quiet and don't come out until I come for you." The trapdoor closed, plunging them into darkness. Sophia held her children close, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain it would give them away. Above them, they could hear muffled voices, then the scrape of the barn door opening. Sophia recognized the authoritative tone of Sheriff Dawson, a man who had turned a blind eye to Victor's abuse for years, accepting free goods from the mercantile in exchange for his willful blindness. "Evening, Sheriff," Kieran's voice came through the floorboards. "What brings you out this way so late?" "Looking for fugitives, Yates. Sophia Harlow and her 2 young uns. She attacked her husband and stole from his store before running off." "That's so." Kieran's voice remained casual. "Haven't seen any woman and children around here. Just me and Thomas working the ranch as usual. Victor Harlow says she might have headed this way. You mind if we take a look around? Help yourself. Though I can't imagine why she'd come here. I barely know the woman, just seen her in town now and then." Footsteps moved above them, and dust sifted down through the cracks in the floorboards. William started to cough, and Sophia quickly covered his mouth with her hand, silently praying he wouldn't make another sound. The search seemed to go on forever, with heavy boots crossing back and forth overhead. Finally, the footsteps receded, and they heard the barn door slide shut. They remained in the dark cellar for what felt like hours before the trapdoor finally opened, revealing Kieran's concerned face. "They're gone," he said, reaching down to help them up. "But they might come back." Sheriff Dawson seemed suspicious. Sophia climbed out, then lifted the children one by one. "What did you tell them?" "That I hadn't seen you. That I've been working from sunup to sundown and would have noticed strangers on my property." Kieran ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Sophia was beginning to recognize as a sign of his agitation. Dawson didn't fully believe me, but he had no reason to push it. Yet. "We should leave in the morning," Sophia said firmly. "I won't put you at risk any longer." Kieran studied her for a long moment. "And go where, Mrs. Harlow? Your husband has connections throughout the county. He's offering a reward for your return now." The news hit Sophia like a physical blow. A reward would ensure that every desperate soul for miles around would be searching for them. "There must be somewhere," she insisted. "Somewhere he can't reach us." "There is," Kieran said slowly. "My sister in Austin. She and her husband would take you in, at least temporarily. But it's a long journey, and not one you could make alone, not with Victor's men watching every road and stage coach." "Then we're trapped," Sophia whispered, despair washing over her. "Not necessarily." Kieran's expression was thoughtful. "I need to make a cattle run to San Antonio next week. It wouldn't be suspicious for me to be on the road with a wagon. From San Antonio, you could take the train to Austin." Hope sparked in Sophia's chest. "You would do that for us?" "I would," Kieran confirmed, his blue eyes steady on hers. "But we need to be careful. For the next few days, you and the children should stay hidden. I'll make arrangements for the journey." That night, Kieran insisted they move to the hayloft, which was more comfortable than the floor and would give them a better vantage point if anyone else came searching. He brought them extra blankets and a small oil lamp that wouldn't be visible from outside. As the children drifted off to sleep, Sophia found herself sitting beside Kieran at the edge of the loft, their legs dangling over the side as they spoke in hushed tones. "Tell me about your ranch," she asked, wanting to focus on something other than her fears. "It's not much," Kieran admitted. 100 acres, small herd of cattle. I've been building it up for the past 5 years. Before that, I worked as a ranch hand on the big spreads further west." "And your family, are they all in Austin?" Kieran shook his head. "Just Sarah. Our parents died when we were young. Fever took them both within a week of each other. I was 17, Sarah 14. We made our way the best we could." "I'm sorry," Sophia said softly, understanding now why he had been so quick to help them. He knew what it was to be alone and vulnerable. "What about you?" Kieran asked. "How did you end up married to Victor Harlow?" Sophia sighed, the familiar pain of regret washing over her. "I was 18, naive. Victor was charming, established in business. My parents thought he was a good match." She laughed bitterly. "The first time he hit me was 3 months after our wedding. I was pregnant with Emma by then." Kieran's hand covered hers, warm and calloused. "You're brave to have left. Many wouldn't have found the courage." "It wasn't courage," Sophia admitted. "It was fear. Last night when he pulled out that gun, I saw my children's future flash before my eyes. A life of terror or worse, becoming like him. I couldn't allow it." They sat in companionable silence after that, until Sophia's eyes grew heavy. As she moved to join her children in their makeshift bed, Kieran caught her hand. "You are brave, Sophia Harlow. Don't ever doubt that." The next few days established a routine. Kieran would come early in the morning with breakfast, then again at midday and evening with more food and fresh water. During the day, he worked his ranch, maintaining appearances, while at night, he often spent hours in the barn, sometimes helping Sophia teach the children their letters using a slate and chalk he had brought, or simply talking with her after the children had fallen asleep. Sophia found herself looking forward to these conversations more than she cared to admit. Kieran was unlike any man she had ever known, thoughtful, gentle with her children, and possessed of a quiet strength that never turned to cruelty. On the fourth day of their hiding, Kieran arrived with news. "I've made arrangements for the cattle drive to San Antonio," he said, sitting beside Sophia on a hay bale. The children were playing a quiet game of jacks nearby, using small pebbles Kieran had cleaned for them. "We'll leave in 2 days before dawn. I've modified my wagon to include a hidden compartment beneath the seat. It will be cramped, but the children can ride there if we encounter any trouble." "And if your ranch hand Thomas notices we're gone?" Sophia asked. "Thomas is trustworthy. He suspects something's happening but hasn't asked questions. I'll tell him the truth before we leave, not your destination, just that I'm helping you escape an abusive husband." Kieran's expression was grim. "He lost a sister to a man with a heavy hand. He'll understand." The plan was set. Sophia spent the next day washing the clothes Kieran had provided and preparing the children for the journey, explaining they would need to be very brave and very quiet. "Like a game of hide and seek," Emma suggested, "always quick to understand." "Exactly like that," Sophia agreed, smoothing her daughter's hair. That evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and purple, Kieran brought them a special dinner: roasted chicken, potatoes, and even a small cake he had purchased from the baker in town. "A little celebration before our journey," he explained, laying out the feast on a clean blanket spread over the hay. The children were delighted with the treat, and even Sophia found herself relaxing, laughing at William's attempts to eat cake without getting it all over his face. After the meal, as the children played with a set of wooden animals Kieran had carved for them, he drew Sophia aside. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, his expression serious. "I heard in town today that Victor has hired men to search beyond the county. He's determined to find you." Sophia felt the familiar cold grip of fear. "Will we still be able to leave?" "Yes, but we need to be even more careful." Kieran hesitated. "Sophia, there's another option we haven't discussed." "What's that?" "Marriage." The word hung in the air between them. "If you were my wife legally, Victor would have no claim on you or the children, not here in Texas." Sophia stared at him, stunned. "You would marry me? A woman you barely know with 2 children not your own?" Kieran's gaze was steady. "I know enough. I know you're strong, loving, and determined to give your children a better life. I know I've come to care for all 3 of you more than I thought possible in such a short time. Kieran, Sophia's voice faltered. The offer was so unexpected, so contrary to everything she had experienced in her first marriage, that she scarcely knew how to respond. "You don't need to answer now," Kieran assured her. "It's just an option to consider. We can still proceed with the original plan if you prefer." That night, long after Kieran had returned to his house and the children had fallen asleep, Sophia lay awake, turning his proposal over in her mind. She couldn't deny the growing feelings she had for the quiet cowboy who had risked so much for them. But marriage. After the nightmare her union with Victor had become, the very idea terrified her. Yet, as she thought about it more, she realized that what frightened her wasn't marriage itself, but the possibility of being trapped again. Kieran had shown nothing but respect and kindness. He treated her children with genuine affection. And there was something else, something she had nearly forgotten existed: the warm flutter in her chest when he smiled at her, the way his touch, even casual, sent a current of awareness through her body. Morning came with no clear decision, but as Sophia watched Kieran interacting with Emma and William, patiently showing them how to braid a leather strip into a simple bracelet, she felt a certainty growing within her. When the children were occupied with their new craft, she approached him. I've been thinking about what you said. About marriage. Kieran set down the piece of leather he had been working with, giving her his full attention. And, if the offer still stands, I accept. The smile that broke across Kieran's face was like sunrise after the longest night. It stands, he said softly. But, Sophia added, I need you to understand something. I'm not the same naive girl who married Victor. I won't be controlled or mistreated ever again. I would never ask that of you, Kieran assured her. What I'm offering is a partnership, Sophia. A family for your children, and a future we build together. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. I don't expect your love overnight, just your trust, which I will earn every day. That evening, Kieran brought a visitor to the barn, Pastor John Miller from the small church outside of town. The elderly man had known Kieran since his arrival in the area, and upon hearing a simplified version of Sophia's situation, had agreed to perform the ceremony in secret. The Lord sees the heart, not the circumstances, the pastor said kindly to Sophia. And I've known this young man long enough to vouch for his character. The ceremony was simple, conducted in the hayloft by lantern light with Emma and William as the only witnesses. Emma scattered wildflowers Kieran had collected around their feet, taking her role as flower girl very seriously, while William held the simple gold band Kieran had purchased that morning in town. Pastor Miller spoke the traditional words, modified slightly to acknowledge the unusual circumstances. When it came time for their vows, Kieran's voice was steady and sure. I, Kieran Yates, take you, Sophia, to be my lawfully wedded wife, to protect and honor, to stand beside in good times and bad, to be father to your children, and to cherish you all the days of my life. Sophia's voice trembled slightly as she repeated her vows, the reality of this new beginning washing over her like a wave. When Kieran slipped the ring onto her finger, his touch was gentle, his blue eyes holding a promise that made her heart race. By the authority vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife, Pastor Miller declared. Mr. Yates, you may kiss your bride. Kieran's kiss was tender, respectful, yet held a warmth that promised more when the time was right. Sophia found herself responding, her hand lifting to his cheek as something awakened within her that she had thought long dead. After the pastor left, with assurances that the marriage certificate would be filed discreetly, Kieran explained the new plan to Sophia and the children. Tomorrow morning, we'll all move to the house, he said. As my wife and stepchildren, you have every right to be there. If Victor or the sheriff returns, we'll face them together, with the law on our side. The next morning dawned clear and bright, as if nature itself approved of their union. Kieran arrived at the barn early, carrying fresh clothes for all of them. Ready to see your new home? He asked, his smile slightly nervous, as if he suddenly feared his modest ranch house might not meet their expectations. The house was simple but well maintained, with a large kitchen, a comfortable sitting room, and 3 bedrooms upstairs. It was clean and orderly, if somewhat sparse in decoration, clearly the home of a man who lived alone and valued function over aesthetics. It's not fancy, Kieran apologized, watching Sophia's face as she explored. It's perfect, she assured him, meaning it. After the oppressive luxury of Victor's house, where every fine object had been a reminder of her gilded cage, the honest simplicity of Kieran's home felt like freedom. The children were ecstatic, running from room to room, exclaiming over every new discovery. When Kieran showed them the bedroom he had prepared for them, with 2 small beds and a chest for their few belongings, Emma threw her arms around his waist in a spontaneous hug that brought a suspicion of moisture to the cowboy's eyes. That afternoon, Kieran took William with him to check on the cattle, the little boy proudly riding in front of him on his gentle mare. Sophia and Emma remained in the house, working together to prepare dinner and add a woman's touch to the rooms. As Sophia kneaded dough for bread, she realized she was humming something she hadn't done in years. The simple domestic task, performed without fear of criticism or punishment, felt like a luxury. Emma, sitting at the kitchen table drawing with a pencil and paper Kieran had provided, looked up at her mother. "Are we going to stay here forever now, Mama?" "Would you like that?" Sophia asked, wiping flour from her hands. Emma nodded solemnly. "Mr. Kieran is nice. He doesn't yell like Papa did, and he knows lots of stories about horses." "Yes, he does," Sophia agreed, smiling at her daughter's simple yet perceptive assessment. "Is he our new Papa now?" Emma asked, returning to her drawing. The question gave Sophia pause. "He's my husband, and he wants to be a father to you and William, but only if that's what you want too." Emma considered this for a moment, her small face serious. "I think I would like that," she finally declared, "but I don't think I want to call him Papa yet." "You don't have to," Sophia assured her. "You can call him Kieran until you're ready for something else." The evening meal was the first they had eaten together at a proper table, and Sophia found herself watching the interactions between Kieran and her children with growing warmth. He listened attentively to William's excited account of their ride to check the cattle, asking questions that made the boy feel important. With Emma, he was equally engaged, admiring her drawing and answering her many questions about life on a ranch with endless patience. After the children were tucked into their new beds, Sophia and Kieran sat together on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the vast Texas sky. "They seem happy," Kieran observed, his gaze on the house where the children slept. "They are," Sophia confirmed. "Happier than I've seen them in a long time." She turned to look at him, studying his profile in the fading light. "Thank you, Kieran, not just for taking us in, but for treating them with such kindness." "They are easy to be kind to," he said simply. "Smart, good-hearted children." He hesitated, then added, "Sophia, about tonight. I've prepared the small bedroom off the kitchen for myself. I want you to know I don't expect anything from you. This marriage may have begun as a way to protect you, but I meant every word of my vows. We can take all the time you need." Sophia was touched by his consideration. Her own marriage to Victor had never included such respect for her feelings or desires. "Thank you," she said softly. I don't think I'm ready yet." Kieran nodded, reaching over to take her hand. "Whenever you are, I'll be here. Until then, I'm content just to have you and the children safe." The next morning brought their first test. Thomas, Kieran's ranch hand, arrived for work to find not just his employer but a woman and 2 children at the breakfast table. The young man's surprise was evident, but he recovered quickly when Kieran introduced Sophia as his wife. "Pleased to meet you, madam," Thomas said, removing his hat. "And the little ones too." "Thomas has been with me for 3 years," Kieran explained to Sophia. "Best ranch hand in the county." The young man blushed at the praise. "Didn't know you were courting, boss," he said, a question in his tone. "It was a quick courtship," Kieran replied easily. "When you know it's right, why wait?" Thomas seemed to accept this, though Sophia noticed his curious glances as he and Kieran discussed the day's work over coffee. When he left to begin his chores, Kieran turned to Sophia. "He'll be discreet, but word will spread. It's better this way, we're not hiding, just living our lives as a family." The word family warmed Sophia in unexpected ways. It had been so long since that word had represented anything but obligation and fear. The days that followed established a new rhythm to their lives. Kieran worked the ranch with Thomas, occasionally taking William with him when the tasks were safe for a child. Sophia took over the running of the household, finding satisfaction in creating a warm, welcoming home. Emma helped with simple chores and spent hours watching the chickens Kieran kept, eventually being trusted to collect eggs on her own. Each evening, they gathered for dinner, sharing stories of their day. Kieran began teaching the children to read better using books he purchased in town, their lessons often extending into the evening as they all sat in the comfortable sitting room. It was during one such evening, almost 2 weeks after their marriage, that the confrontation they had been anticipating finally occurred. The sound of approaching horses broke the peaceful quiet, and Kieran moved to the window, his expression hardening as he recognized the visitors. "Victor," he said quietly, "with Sheriff Dawson and 2 men I don't recognize." Fear gripped Sophia's heart, but she straightened her shoulders, gathering the children close. "What do? We face them together," Kieran said firmly. "Remember, you're my wife now, legally. They have no claim on you." The pounding on the door was aggressive, urgent. Kieran opened it calmly, standing tall in the doorway, blocking the view into the house. "Evening, gentlemen," he said, his tone neutral. "What brings you to my ranch at this hour?" "Step aside, Yates." Victor's voice, slurred with drink, carried clearly to where Sophia stood with the children. "I know you're hiding my wife and children." "I'm afraid you're mistaken," Kieran replied evenly. "There's no one here by that description." "Let us in, Yates," Sheriff Dawson ordered. "We have reason to believe Sophia Harlow and her children are on your property." "I have no objection to you entering my home, Sheriff," Kieran said, stepping back. "But I should warn you, you'll find only my wife, Sophia Yates, and my stepchildren, Emma and William." Victor pushed past him, freezing when he saw Sophia standing in the sitting room. His face, already flushed with alcohol, darkened further with rage. "You bitch," he snarled, taking a step toward her. "Did you really think you could run away and play house with this cowboy?" Kieran moved between them, his stance protective but not aggressive. "That's enough, Harlow. You're speaking to my wife, and I won't have such language in my home." Victor's laugh was ugly. "Your wife? She's my wife, you fool, has been for 7 years. "Not anymore," Kieran said calmly. He turned to the sheriff. "Dawson, I have the marriage certificate right here, performed by Pastor Miller 2 weeks ago, all legal and proper." He retrieved the document from a drawer and handed it to the sheriff, who examined it with a frown. "This appears to be in order," Dawson admitted reluctantly. "But if she was still married to Victor when this ceremony took place—" "She wasn't," Kieran interrupted. "Victor's continued abuse, culminating in shooting her, constitutes abandonment under Texas law. Pastor Miller confirmed this before performing the ceremony." Victor lunged forward, his hand going to the gun at his hip. "You stole my wife, you bastard." Before he could draw, Kieran had him disarmed, the movement so swift Sophia barely saw it happen. He held Victor's wrist in a grip that made the other man wince. "I didn't steal anyone," Kieran said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Sophia made her choice to leave you, and I made my choice to offer her and her children a better life." He released Victor's wrist with a shove that sent him stumbling back. "Now, I suggest you leave my property before I have the sheriff arrest you for trespassing." Sheriff Dawson, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, cleared his throat. "The marriage certificate does change things, Harlow. If Pastor Miller confirmed she was free to marry—" "This is ridiculous," Victor exploded. "She's my wife. Those are my children." "No," Sophia said, speaking for the first time since their arrival. Her voice was steady, stronger than she had expected. "I'm not your wife anymore, Victor. And you lost any right to call Emma and William your children the first time you raised your hand to me in front of them." Victor's face contorted with rage. "You'll regret this, Sophia. Both of you will." He turned to the sheriff. "Are you really going to let them get away with this?" Dawson looked uncomfortable, caught between his loyalty to Victor and the clear legality of the situation. The law's the law, Harlow. If she's legally married to Yates now, there's nothing I can do. This isn't over, Victor threatened, his gaze moving from Sophia to Kieran. Not by a long shot. After they left, the house seemed unnaturally quiet. William, who had been clinging to Sophia throughout the confrontation, finally spoke, his voice small and frightened. "Is Papa going to take us away?" Kieran knelt down to the boy's level. "No, William. You and your sister and your mother are staying right here with me. I promise." The certainty in his voice seemed to reassure the child, who nodded solemnly. That night, after the children were asleep, Sophia found Kieran sitting alone on the porch, staring out into the darkness. "You were magnificent," she said, sitting beside him. "I've never seen anyone stand up to Victor like that." "Men like him only understand strength," Kieran replied, his gaze still on the distant horizon. "But he won't give up easily. We need to be prepared." "For what?" Kieran turned to look at her, his expression serious. "Victor strikes me as the type to hold a grudge, and he has money and influence in town." "You think he'll try to hurt us?" Sophia asked, though she already knew the answer. She had lived with Victor's vindictiveness for too long to doubt it. "I think he'll try," Kieran confirmed. "But I won't let him succeed, Sophia. I meant what I said in there. You and the children are staying right here, safe with me." The determination in his voice, the protectiveness in his gaze, awakened something in Sophia that had been dormant for too long. Without thinking, she leaned forward and kissed him, a gesture of gratitude and growing affection that quickly became something more. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, Kieran studied her face in the moonlight. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. Sophia nodded, taking his hand. "I'm sure." That night, Sophia Yates truly became Kieran's wife in every sense, discovering in his arms a tenderness and passion she had never known existed. In the safety of their bedroom, she found not just physical pleasure but a deeper connection, a meeting of souls that healed wounds she had thought would never close. As dawn broke over the ranch, Sophia lay awake, watching Kieran sleep beside her. His face in repose was younger, the lines of responsibility smoothed away. She traced the contour of his jaw lightly with her finger, marveling at how this man, this stranger who had become her protector, her husband, her lover, had changed everything in such a short time. The next few weeks passed in relative peace. Victor made no further appearances at the ranch, though Kieran heard through Thomas, who occasionally visited the saloon in town, that Victor was still talking, still making threats. They remained vigilant, but as days turned to weeks with no incident, they began to hope that perhaps Victor had accepted defeat. Life on the ranch settled into a pleasant routine. Sophia found herself flourishing in her new role, not just as wife and mother, but as an active partner in the ranch operations. She had always been good with numbers, a skill Victor had dismissed but Kieran valued. She began keeping the ranch accounts, suggesting small improvements that increased their efficiency and profits. The children blossomed as well. William, once shy and fearful, became an energetic, curious boy who followed Kieran everywhere, soaking up knowledge about horses, cattle, and the land. Emma, always the more reserved of the two, developed a special bond with the animals on the ranch, particularly a gentle mare named Daisy that Kieran began teaching her to ride. One evening in late summer, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset after the children had gone to bed, Kieran took Sophia's hand. "I've been thinking," he began, a touch of nervousness in his voice. "About what?" Sophia asked, turning to look at him. "About us. This family we're building." He squeezed her hand gently. "Sophia, I know our marriage started as a way to protect you and the children, but it's become so much more to me." "To me too," Sophia admitted softly. The past months had transformed her feelings for Kieran from gratitude to deep affection to something she was finally ready to name. "I love you, Kieran. I think I have for some time now." The smile that lit his face was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "I love you too." "More than I ever thought possible." He hesitated, then continued. "I want to make it official, not just our marriage, but the children too. I want to adopt Emma and William legally if you agree." Tears filled Sophia's eyes. "You would do that?" "They're already my children in every way that matters," Kieran said simply. "I just want it recognized by law so there can never be any question." The adoption process was straightforward, especially with Victor having made no attempt to assert his parental rights since that night at the ranch. By the end of summer, Emma and William were legally Kieran's children, their names changed to Yates. The day the adoption was finalized, they celebrated with a special dinner, followed by gifts for the children, a small saddle sized perfectly for Emma, who had become an enthusiastic rider, and a carved wooden cattle set for William, each piece lovingly detailed by Kieran's own hand. That night, after the children were asleep, Sophia had a surprise of her own for Kieran. "I went to see Dr. Reynolds in town today," she told him as they prepared for bed. Kieran looked concerned immediately. "Are you ill?" "No," Sophia said, a smile playing at her lips. "Quite the opposite. I'm with child, Kieran. Our child." The joy that transformed his features was something Sophia knew she would remember all her life. Kieran gathered her in his arms, lifting her off her feet in his excitement. "A baby," he whispered, setting her down gently, his hand moving to rest on her still flat stomach. "Our baby." The news of Sophia's pregnancy spread quickly through the small community. Most reactions were positive. The Yates family had become well respected, with Kieran's fair business dealings and Sophia's involvement in the local church and school winning them many friends. But the news also reached Victor, who had been unusually quiet in recent months. The reminder that Sophia had truly moved on, was building a new family with another man, reignited his rage and resentment. Kieran received the warning from Thomas, who had overheard Victor making drunken threats in the saloon. "He was saying he'd make you both pay before that baby was born," Thomas reported grimly. "I thought you should know, boss." Kieran increased their vigilance, never letting Sophia or the children venture into town alone, always keeping his rifle within reach. The peaceful life they had built felt suddenly fragile, threatened by the shadow of Victor's hatred. The confrontation, when it came, was not what any of them expected. It was a cool autumn evening, with Sophia and the children inside preparing dinner while Kieran finished chores in the barn. The sound of a wagon approaching drew Kieran outside, where he found Victor, obviously drunk, slumped over the reins of a battered wagon. "Harlow," Kieran acknowledged cautiously, his hand moving to the pistol at his hip. "What brings you here?" Victor raised his head, his face haggard, eyes bloodshot. "Came to see my wife," he slurred. "My children." "They're not yours anymore," Kieran reminded him, tensing as Victor climbed unsteadily from the wagon. "You need to leave." "Not leaving till I see her," Victor insisted, taking a stumbling step forward. "Got something to say." "Whatever it is, you can say it to me," Kieran said firmly, positioning himself between Victor and the house. Victor laughed, a broken sound. "Always the protector, aren't you, Yates? The white knight who rescued the damsel in distress." His expression darkened. "But you don't know her like I do, don't know what she's really like." "I know exactly who she is," Kieran replied evenly. "A strong, loving woman who deserved better than you gave her." Victor reached inside his coat and Kieran tensed, expecting a weapon. Instead, Victor withdrew a folded document, waving it unsteadily. "Know what this is? Deed to my store, sold it yesterday." He laughed again, bitter and hollow. "Leaving Texas. Nothing here for me anymore." Kieran studied him warily, not trusting this apparent surrender. "That's probably for the best. Want to see her before I go," Victor insisted. "One last time." "That's not happening, Harlow." Victor's face contorted with anger. "She was my wife first. Those were my children first. You took everything from me." "No, Victor." Sophia's voice came from behind Kieran. She had emerged from the house, drawn by the commotion. "You lost us through your own actions." Kieran moved to stand beside her, his body still partially shielding her. "Go back inside, Sophia." She shook her head. "No, I need to say this." She faced Victor squarely, her posture straight despite the small bump now visible beneath her dress. "You never loved us, Victor. You only wanted to possess us, control us. What Kieran and I have, what our family has, is real love, built on respect and kindness." Victor stared at her, his anger seeming to drain away, replaced by a bleak emptiness. "You really love him?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "With all my heart," Sophia confirmed. Victor nodded slowly, as if this final confirmation had settled something within him. "I'm leaving for California tomorrow. You won't see me again." He turned to go, then paused, looking back at her. "Take care of Emma and William." "We will," Kieran assured him, his arm going around Sophia's waist. They watched in silence as Victor climbed back onto his wagon and drove away, the figure growing smaller in the distance until it disappeared around a bend in the road. "You think he meant it?" Sophia asked quietly. "About leaving?" "I believe he did," Kieran replied. "Something in his eyes. I think he's finally given up." That night, for the first time since they had become a family, they slept without the shadow of fear hanging over them. The knowledge that Victor was truly gone from their lives brought a peace that had been elusive before, a sense that their future was now entirely their own to shape. The following spring brought the birth of their son, Samuel Kieran Yates, a sturdy, healthy baby with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determined spirit. Emma and William embraced their role as older siblings with enthusiasm, William proudly declaring himself the baby's protector, while Emma sang lullabies she had learned from Sophia. As Sophia watched Kieran holding their newborn son, surrounded by the children who had become his own in every way that mattered, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From that desperate night in the rain, fleeing with her children toward an uncertain future, to this warm, love-filled home that had become their sanctuary. "What are you thinking about?" Kieran asked, noticing her thoughtful expression as he gently rocked Samuel. "About how sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead us to the best," Sophia replied, reaching out to touch his face. "If I hadn't found the courage to leave that night, if you hadn't found us in your barn." "But you did, and I did," Kieran said simply. "And now we have this." He gestured to include the children, the home they had built together. "A family." "A family," Sophia echoed, the word no longer a source of pain but of profound joy. Over the years that followed, the Yates family thrived. The ranch prospered under their combined efforts, growing to become one of the most successful operations in the county. Emma, with her natural affinity for animals, developed into an accomplished horsewoman, eventually taking over the breeding program Kieran established. William showed a talent for business, using the education Kieran and Sophia ensured he received to help expand the ranch's operations. Samuel was joined by a sister, Sarah, named for Kieran's beloved sibling, and later by another brother, James. The Yates house, expanded to accommodate their growing family, became known throughout the region for its warmth and hospitality. They never heard from Victor again, though years later, a traveler passing through from California mentioned that a merchant named Harlow had established a successful business in San Francisco. Sophia felt no regret upon hearing this, only a distant relief that he had found a life away from them, and perhaps some measure of peace. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Kieran surprised Sophia with a gift, a small silver locket containing miniature portraits of all their children. "For the woman who made me the richest man in Texas," he said as he fastened it around her neck. "Not in money, but in love." Sophia touched the locket, then reached up to kiss him, still feeling after all these years the same thrill at his touch. "I was the lucky one," she whispered. "You saved us that night." Kieran shook his head, drawing her close. "No, my love. That night in the rain when you chose to run, to protect your children at any cost, you saved yourself. I was just fortunate enough to be there when you needed shelter, to be the man who got to build a life with the bravest woman I've ever known." As they stood together on the porch of the home they had created, watching their children playing in the yard bathed in the golden light of a Texas sunset, Sophia knew he was right. The strength had always been within her. Kieran had simply helped her rediscover it, nurturing it alongside the love that had grown between them. From a desperate flight through the rain to a life filled with love and purpose, their journey had begun in fear, but had led to a happiness deeper and more enduring than either could have imagined on that stormy night when a frightened woman and her 2 children found shelter in a cowboy's barn.